Welcome to the Poetic Resurrection Podcast, where we explore perceptions. How self-reflecting questions can give you a better understanding of self. I'm your host, Sonia Iris Lozada. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Poetic Resurrection. Today, I am so happy to welcome back Lynne Thompson, who was, the last time we talked, the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. Tell me, what's been going on with you? And welcome.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be back with you and your listeners. Since we last spoke, my term as Poet Laureate has come to an end. But because a new Poet Laureate hasn't been appointed yet, I've been just as busy as I was before, especially post-pandemic. And we're able to get out and about a little bit more than we were during the first year of my appointment. And also, I have a new collection of poems that have come out. Blue on a Blue Palette from Boa Editions was just published last April, so I'm thrilled about that.
All right. And that you mentioned offline that's your fourth book?
It is my fourth book. Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, when I met you, you had one book.
Yeah, that's going back a ways. But yeah, I had one book that came out in 2007, Beg No Pardon. Then I had Start with a Small Guitar from What Books Press that came out in 2013. And then Fretwork won the Marsh Poetry Prize and was published in 2019. And then this new baby, Blue on a Blue Palette from Boa Editions. So I'm very excited about that.
And for all you listeners, I'll put all the notes. You can get your copy.
Absolutely.
I heard one of the podcasts while you were the Poet Laureate.
Yes.
Yes. Are you continuing doing a podcast like that? Because it seemed like you were leading that one.
Yes, that was something that I started in partnership with the LA Public Library. So for the 2 years of my appointment, I did do a poem a week, not my own poems, poems of other people, primarily Californians, but sometimes beyond. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But no, that although you can go back and listen to the podcast on the LA Public Library website, and it's called Poems on Air, I'm no longer doing them live. So people just have to go back to the archives and listen to the old episodes.
Yeah, keeping up a podcast is a lot of work.
You know as well as anybody, yes, it is a lot of work.
Because I've been doing this since 2020.
Okay.
It was my way of giving back because honestly, I was sick and shit to go out in March.
Yes. Yeah.
I did not want to catch COVID.
Right.
Yeah, but knock on wood, everything's good. But I do want to ask, would you be willing to read some of your poetry for us?
Absolutely, I would be willing to do that. Let's see, I'm just going to open it at any page. And actually, this is good for Southern California. And when you hear it, you'll know why. Lay of a Lie. These picture postcard poems, transplants to Southern California, are more closely allied with grasses than with oaks. And so they need abundances of water to thrive, and like the day workers who trim them, need sustenance from elsewhere to make them feel at home. Only the Washingtonia foliifera is native, and it has been choked by these imported tropical trees, the Bismarck, the Queen, the Mexican fan. Decorative exotics giving neither shade nor substance. Many were planted in the 1930s to prop up the cinematic lies we love to tell of our lives. Meantime, rats thrill palms' crowns of thatch. And I'll read one more if you'd like.
Yes.
A woman's body aging still loves itself, kisses the air that surrounds it, loves the lips in full pout, famous birthplace of all kisses. The belly, brown, round, kisses its inverted button, and the shoulders, oh, how I kiss my shoulders. My nose kissing lilies in a purply night sky, My neck long as forever, fit for 20,000 kisses. 20,000 kisses for each cocoa breast and nipple. For the lower arms that encircle each other, then kiss, kiss. Even the ears, French kissing to tunes of Django and Debussy. The upper arms wishing to kiss their tender underarms. Thread of both hands kissing the lifeline, and my cheeks colored bronze with kisses. Lashes that kiss my eyes, that kiss everything they see. My forehead a map of the places where kisses live long. Long live my kinky hair, braided with kiss after kiss after kiss.
I love that. How often are we more critical instead of loving our bodies?
Well, that is exactly why I wrote this poem. I think I was having a day when I thought, I hate how I look. And then I decided, you know what? You should be grateful. You're healthy. You're upright. Your brain is working relatively well. You should be happy about your body and you should praise it. So that's why I wrote that poem.
Yeah, because if you think about our bodies, we're a freaking miracle we even exist.
Exactly.
Every single little cell has to work with the next one. And to be healthy, I mean, that's a gift.
Exactly. It is a gift. And so I just wanted to send that out into the world for the women. And so many of us, as you say, who disparage our looks and our bodies and the hair doesn't look right and this and that. You know what? At the end of the day, be glad for your body. It is serving you well every minute of your life.
Yes, I appreciate it. And I keep saying, thank you for being healthy. Thank you for being healthy. Because my mom passed away from dementia.
Yeah,
yes. It was really sad. And, cancer, it's like.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yes, there's so many things that can go wrong. So if you have relative health, that is a major thing. It makes all the difference.
Yes, it's a true blessing.
Yes.
The first one, I want to discuss about the rats in the palm trees. Oh my God, that is so true.
Well, and one of the things I love about writing poems is all the things that you can learn. So I guess I wasn't aware until I started to work on this poem that most of the palm trees that we Southern Californians take for granted are not indigenous to this neighborhood.
Not at all.
And when they were planning as city planners, the cities in the 1910s and 20s, they wanted to have this kind of Italian, Mediterranean kind of feel to it. So they brought in the palm trees. The palm trees are now, for the most part, they were planted in the 20s. So they have a 100-year lifeline, and they are coming to the ends of their lives. Oh. And so that's why you'll see a lot around the city, people are replacing more natural plants to this environment than the palm trees. And the fact is that as they were dying, the rats were living in the top of them. So that's when I learned all of that history. Then I wanted to know the names of the trees. Of course, you know how we writers are. So that's how I found out about the Washingtonian Prolifera, which is the only native palm to the Los Angeles area.
I wonder what that one looks like, because
I'm not sure I could pick it out from the others. But these others that I named, the Bismarck, the Queen, the Mexican fan, those are trees that were brought in to create this appearance, this movie appearance that they had in Los Angeles in the 20s. Not so much now.
And what a lot of people don't realize, I was on the podcast with someone else and I said, Southern California is really a desert.
It's really a desert. Exactly.
And everything's brought in.
Yeah, we should have more cactus and water tolerant plants because we are a desert.
What I like in landscapes is they bring in the agave plants.
Yes.
And they look like big, huge flowers all over the place. Yes. And those are so beautiful.
They're lovely. They're lovely.
So tell me what has been going on with you in the last couple of years.
So
now you wrote your books.
Yeah. So the way this book came about, as I was serving as poet laureate, I wasn't writing as much because I was trying to be out and about in the community. And a friend of mine suggested that he said, well, Lynne, you should really try to get a book together, a collection together to send out to publishers because they're going to be interested in what is happening with the Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. So I did that. I said, well, I don't really have a theme. I just have a bunch of poems laying around. And he said, I bet you if you look through them, you will find that there is a theme. So sure enough, I started looking at all of the poems, and I realized how many poems I had written about women, their joys, their rages, their pleasures, their sexuality, their aging, their concern for the environment, etc. So I realized this is a collection about women and how they are survivors, how we are survivors at the end of the day. And I also had a lot of poems that mentioned the color blue. That wasn't intentional. Blue isn't necessarily my favorite color, but I realized those two things were happening. So those were the themes that I worked on and looked for in putting the collection together. So sent it out. I was thrilled to have it accepted by BOA Editions, which is one of our best small presses in the country, or mid-sized presses. So since it was published last month, I've been doing a ton of readings. I just got back from England, and I had several readings there and an interview there.
How exciting.
Yes, it was very, very exciting. And it was interesting. I was a little worried about whether I had too many Americanisms in the book. So I said to the two audiences that I read for, if there's anything you have questions about or you want to explain. And both groups said, no, we got it. And maybe the few little things we didn't know, we'll look up. And they were just so pleased with it. I was delighted, absolutely delighted.
You know what I find? You get an audience, but you don't realize that that's your audience until you read for them. You're like, oh, really? Okay.
Exactly. And it's interesting to be out of the country and see what sort of things appeal, what questions people have about which particular poems, because it is a different environment. It is a different culture. And so you're eager to see what resonates with those readers. And I just couldn't have been happier. The two bookstores, the Feminist Bookstore and October Books, I want to give them a shout out. October Books is actually in Southampton, and the Feminist Bookstore is in London. And they both were so gracious and welcoming, and the audiences were wonderful.
You've been doing a lot of readings outside of the US and going to England. Were there any outside the US, and where have you been doing readings here? And what upcoming readings are you doing?
Well, actually, I have a reading this evening, June 1st, at Beyond Baroque for the 50th anniversary celebration of Poetry Flash, which you may know is a magazine, actually a newspaper that has been coming out of San Francisco for 50 years and is always full of interviews and calendars of upcoming events. So it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. So we're having a celebration for them tonight. Let's see, what else is coming up? I'll return to Beyond Baroque on the 20th of June for a reading with Pam Ward, another local poet. And this is really a chance for me to read for that particular audience from the new book. And oh my goodness, I have some interviews and podcasts coming up. So I do have a website. If people want to check that out, they can go to Lynne Thompson, one word, .us. And that's Lynne with an E, Lynne, Thompson.us. And my events page has all of my upcoming activities.
And if for people that didn't get that, all of this is going to be in the notes below, so you could just click on the link and go directly to her website.
Perfect.
How about some more readings?
Yes, let's read.
I'm going to milk you for your poetry.
Listen,
here.
I love to be milked for my poetry. Okay, this is one called Ode to Bones. The brothers gave me the nickname Bones, presumably because when they looked at me, they thought, she is nothing but skin, and the playwright Titus Plautus gets the credit, earned or otherwise, for saying your name is your destiny. But what, after all, can Romans tell us today? Suppose instead that a name is the past come to build a bridge to cross over. If this is true, I could be the bones of my parents' beloved Carib birds, a lesser Antillean tanager, Cuban grassquit, Jamaican crow, the bones of ancestors stolen from Africa, the Hottentot teal, brown booby. Or maybe after all bones are just playing into the game as in the game of dominoes, where the goal is to get the die from the boneyard. On the other hand, it may be that music makes all the difference. This old man, he played one, give a dog a bone. This old man, he played five with a knick-knack, paddywhack. And never forget to look in your kitchen, to put bones in your stock, bones to add flavor to a mirepoix, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, to use a boning knife to separate the flesh of the salmon or trout or bass. Their bones may be as small as yours or mine, stupendous to keep the voices in your head from driving you crazy, or as large as the femur or tibia, each fighting for supremacy.
I love it. So, were you really called Bones?
Yes, I was very skinny. One would not believe it today, but I was very skinny as a girl, and my brothers all called me Bones. That was my nickname.
Oh, how funny. So the show, when it came out, you must have said, "Oh, look at that."
Yeah, I just thought, you poets look for the smallest things sometimes, and as opposed to the biggest things, and so much packed in our memories, and sometimes we tend to think, oh, nobody will care, or that's not important. But when I started really thinking about bones and how people had referred to bones and how we use bones in games and how we use bones in the kitchen and all of that, I really realized that there was an opportunity to build on this idea that came from the fact that my brothers had given me this nickname.
You know what's fascinating is I didn't even think about bones that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why as you get into it, I just was, never forgot that my brothers always called me Bones. But then I thought, well, that's not enough for a poem. I've got to say something else about bones. So you start doing a little research, and which is one of my favorite parts of crafting a poem. And all these other things popped up. So I thought, oh, that might work. I think that's good. So that's exactly where it came from.
I totally can be right there with you, especially when you said that you didn't have enough for a collection, but you realized you did.
Yes.
I have been working on this last collection of mine for 2 years. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I started saying, well, why don't I talk about nothing?
Right.
What it's like to be blank, exactly. What it's like to be, because otherwise it's those small things is what you look for.
Exactly.
And you build
on those things. And I think your tactic was exactly right. I've heard people say, well, I can't write about mountains because I don't know anything about mountains. I said, okay, so write what you imagine about mountains or what you like to know about mountains, or pick a mountain and see if something comes to you. So I think I tell students when I do workshops that I don't allow myself to believe in writer's block. Even if I'm just writing down the poem that by hand that someone else wrote, I'm going to learn something in the process of putting it in the page. I might hear it differently or see the layout differently. And that's all part of the process of getting to crafting your own poem.
Exactly. And that's true. I mean, sometimes all you get is a sentence.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh, this is a really good sentence, though. Exactly. It was a really good phrase. I have to use that somewhere. I have a page that I have all the phrases and I don't know what to do with them.
Exactly. Yet. And sometimes you just put them in a bag and pluck them out randomly and you think, oh, this is odd, but it's kind of interesting, and it'll just take you off in a direction.
Yes. Yes. What do you plan more? I mean, obviously you're going to write more books, but how often do you come up with a book? It's like every 2 years, every 3 years?
No, and I don't have any set time. So the first book was 2007. The second was 2013. The third was 2019. And now this one this year, 2024. So there, I did learn a lesson that I will share, and the publishers know that I feel this way. So I'm not telling a secret. That second book, I rushed it. it's a fine book. I love the book. It's gorgeously put together in terms of the print and the cover that I got and all of that. But I rushed it because I was feeling like, oh, it's been so long since I've written a book and nobody will remember me. And it turned out it's a slender volume of poems, Start with a Small Guitar. And I didn't have, at that point, a systematic way to keep poems that had already been published in one place so that I could go back and find them easily.
Mm-hmm.
If I had done that, there were about 15 more pages of poem that I could have added to this manuscript that would have really fit well together. And so I say that to your listeners who worry about, oh, I should rush it. Do not rush it. Book will come when it's ready. Be organized about your writing, whether you've published it or you haven't published it. Keep files, keep notes so that when you get ready to put it together, you can easily access everything you have that's available that you think you might want to use. So I stress that again with students and workshops and just say, this is critical because A, you don't need to rush it. You have time. And B, you want it to be the best that it possibly can be. And I think that book could have been stronger if I had included those other poems in it.
Yeah, I've been going through something similar. And I said, okay, which ones did I already give to the editor? It's like, so now I have a file just for him.
Exactly.
This is what I gave him already.
Right.
Because going back and, and sometimes you do so many rewrites that you find the original poem and you think it's new.
Exactly. And sometimes you find yourself as you're going, and I do keep all of my drafts as you're going through it. You go back to the original and say, actually, I should have stayed on that track. I got, off, but you need to be able to see all those iterations. And frequently people will ask you, even if it's a solo poem that's published in a journal, for example, or an anthology, people will say, tell us the steps that you got there. So if you have all of your drafts, you can track what your thinking was. I took out a line, I moved a line, I got rid of this stanza altogether, I moved the last stanza to the second stanza, whatever the case may be. And that's always an interesting process for people to hear about. How did you get there? How did you do it? So there's many values, I think, to keeping those drafts. But as you said, the most important thing is to have files where you can access what you want for a particular purpose. That's really important, I think.
And do you find that, because you said you were writing a lot about women and you used the color blue a lot, were those poems written within a certain time? Because I feel that we go through peaks and valleys in our writing, and sometimes we gear one way and then we're done with that and we go to
something else. Yeah, they were written over a span of many years. Some of them predate the book that came out in 2019, but I think I was becoming consciously and subconsciously increasingly agitated about the treatment of women in this country, the diminution of our rights with the Dobbs decision, how we're treated in business, how we're treated in politics, how we're treated in the arts even. I think those concerns were roiling in my head, as well as the disappearance of women, the murder of women. There's a poem in here that's dedicated to Sandra Bland, who many of us believe was murdered, to Breonna Taylor. So I just was increasingly concerned about the political and cultural landscape for women around the world, really.
You know what? The world is changing, I think, at a pace that is panicking many people.
Yes.
And women are the brunt of it, or how we're used to propagate the belief system.
Yeah.
The more kids you have, the more we have of this culture, the more we could take over, the more, you know, but yet treated like second-class citizens.
Treated like second-class citizens. And yet so often it's women to the rescue, quote unquote, because women are fighters. We're survivors. We recognize that if we don't speak up for ourselves and each other, we will be marginalized. If a woman stands up for herself, she's bitchy. If a man stands up, he's assertive. Well, exactly. Really? Not so much. So yeah, we have to continue to fight for our rights all up and down the line in every sphere of our lives, as mothers, as grandmothers, as single women, as gay women, as women of color, whatever the case may be, we have to fight, because it feels to me, I'm old enough to say, it feels like the pendulum is swinging back. We gained a lot of rights. And now actually I still can't believe this. I saw a youngish woman, she looked to be maybe in her early 30s, who was interviewing a man, I want to say Arizona, but I'm not completely sure. But anyway, he was like a city council person or some role like that. And he actually, you could tell she was well prepared. She had her notes, so on and so forth. He said to her that actually the country should think about repealing the vote for women. And
what?
You could see she was prepared for just about anything else but that. She said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Things were much better before women got the vote."
He wasn't even around, I'm sure, in the 1920s
exactly,
when the women got the vote.
Probably, So she was just kind of speechless, like, what do you say to that? I mean, she kept her composure, but the fact that this guy felt he could say to a reporter who was filming for television, so it wasn't like he was in some room with his buddy somewhere, he was happy to say publicly that that was something we should consider. So when I hear things like that, among all the other craziness we're hearing these days, I just am increasingly spurred on to speak our truth whenever I have the opportunity.
I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And that's why I start my own project.
Yes.
Because if I have to sit around and wait for somebody, it's never going to get done.
Never going to get done. Absolutely.
So I wanted to start a podcast, fine. Granted, when I started, I didn't know it was so much work. Right. I had to learn how to edit. Right. I had to learn how to do all these things. But it's a passion. And granted, either you make money or not, I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to have a voice.
Absolutely.
And for people around me to have a voice.
Absolutely.
And I think that's extremely important for people to have a voice.
Yes.
Now, what would you like to say to the audience? Because we're running out of time. As a closing, because you have been fabulous. And I mean, that last part is so true. And I love it. What would you like to say to the audience?
I think what I'd like to say to them is, and I was asked this question in another venue, I think that it's important for us, particularly as women, but all of us, however we identify, to pursue our creative side, because we're so busy just trying to survive, to have the job, to make the money. And those things are important. We want to take care of our children and all of that. Those are crucial things. But also, not so that you can be the most famous person ever, but if you like cooking, take that up. That's creative. If you like planting your garden, spend some hours doing that. Writing, reading, listening to music, or making music if you're a musician, even if it's on an amateur level. That creative energy and urge, I think, is a positive thing for the planet. They say plants listen to music. I think it's a positive thing that can not only bring self-satisfaction, but joy to others around us. So I would urge your audience, I bet they already do because they're listening to your podcasts, I would urge them to pursue that creative urge and follow it wherever it takes them.
Yes. Find the joy in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm never happier than when I'm writing a poem.
Thank you. And it's like sometimes you write something, you go back and you go, oh, I wrote that?
Exactly. Exactly. Because you've made something in a space where that didn't exist before you made it. So that is a wonderful thing.
It is. Thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate you. And thank you for reading from your poems. All the links will be on the bottom so people can get their copy.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me back. It's wonderful to see you, and all the best to your listeners.
Thank you for listening to the Poetic Resurrection podcast, available on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, and many other podcast platforms. Please visit us and subscribe to our newsletter at poeticresurrection.com for the latest information and updates.